All right, this is going to be an assignment that has three parts to it. First of all, there's the student grade book, and you should see that here. There's also another part that's the Martial Arts Academy, and finally, there's employee pay down here. So I'm just going to start with the first part. We're going to be using what's called the if function, and I've completed the assignment here, and so yours should end up looking like this, but of course, it needs to have the correct formulas. So I'm going to show you how the if works. We're going to start with the student grade book. Let's say you have these students. Um, Sam Mathers, for example, made 180 and a 70 on his exam. Now you can easily do the average. You should be able to do the average function here, equal average, and then this range of cells, B5 through D5. Okay, so you should be able to get the average function. By the way, before you start, put your name up here in cell A1. All right, so the question is, now you get these averages, you should be able to copy that down by pulling down the fill handle. Now, how do we get the word pass or fail to appear based on what these are? Well, we can use something called the if function, and I'm going to show you how this works. Let's just say I have 100 in this cell. Okay, I can say something like if or equal if, and then in parentheses, I have to put a condition. So the condition has to be either true or false. We sometimes call that a logical condition. So I'm gonna click here. So I'm gonna say if E12 is greater than 50, let's just say. Then I put a comma, and I'm going to put something that should happen, something that should display in that cell that I'm in, where the formula is, something that should display if that condition is true. If E12 is equal to 50, I'm just going to say ha ha ha. Whoop, if I just wanted to display some text, a label or something like that, I just have to put it in quotes. So I'm going to say ha ha, and then I put a comma, and then I'm going to put what I want to display if that condition is false. So if E12 is greater than 50, I want to say ha ha ha. Otherwise, I want to say he. How about that? Now I have to close in parentheses because, as you know, what we've got here is there's three parts to the if. There's the condition that can either be true or false, and then there's what you do if the condition is true, and there's what you do if the condition is false. So now when I press enter, it will display ha 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 because the condition is true. Now if I change this to 25, notice what happens. It changes to he. I'm not sure you can see that very well, but that's how that would work. Okay, that's the first part, and I'll talk about the Marshall. So at this point, you should be able to come in here and do something similar. If this E5 is greater than a 60, I should say that, then we're supposed to put pass. Otherwise, we put fail, and then you copy that formula down. Okay. All right, I'm gonna come back and I'll talk about the rest of it. All right, so that's how you would do. Hopefully, you've completed the student grade book. And now I want to talk about the Martial Arts Academy. Supposing we have these people, and they're the same people, I just copied them down. But let's say we have these people, and they're going to they're the parent of some kids that are going to a martial arts academy. So Sam Mathers, for example, has three students at the academy, and Ellis Manford has one student, and so forth. Haley Samuels has two. So what we want to do is come up with a formula right here. That's what your job is, to come up with a formula here. Started in what is this, cell C12. Come up with a formula for the tuition. Now it tells you up here the tuition is $60 per student. But if a family has more than two students, the tuition is $50 per student. Okay, so the way you can do this, of course, is you can put you wouldn't put it here. I'm going to put it right here in E13, but you would put something in C12 that is similar to what I'm going to put here. So I'm just going to say this is equal to if, and then I'll open parentheses because we enclose in parentheses everything that the function, in this case the if function, needs to function. And remember, there are three things: a condition that can either be true or false, and then what to do if the condition is true, and then what to do if the condition is false. So I'm just going to say if, let's just, I'm going to put a number eventually right here in E12. I'm going to say if E12 is greater than 50, then what we did before was we up above we had pass or fail. We wanted it to display pass or fail. But in this case, I want to do some sort of calculation. So let's just say I want to take whatever's in cell um, we'll just say in cell F12 and multiply it by 2 just for fun. And then if the condition is false, I want to take just whatever's in F12 and multiply it by 3. Okay? So when I press enter, it ends up 0 because I don't have, I'm going to double click it and you can see it. I don't have anything in E12. So let me put something in E12. I'm going to put 100. Okay. When I press enter, this ends up being 0 because there's nothing in this cell. So I'm going to put, let's just put 30 here. Okay. When I put 30 in here, notice this says 60. Okay. Again, let's look at what the function is. It says if E12 is greater than 50, and it is, isn't it? So we're going to take whatever's in F12 and multiply it by 2. So it ends up being 60. Now, let's just say that E12 was, let's change it to 10. Okay, now what should happen is it should do the else portion of the if. So now notice it multiplied this by 3. If it's greater than 50, multiply this by 2. If it's less than 50, then less than or equal to 50, then multiply it by 2. Does that make sense? So you're taking, this is the, if this is true, if E12 is greater than 50, then you want to take F12 and multiply by 2. Otherwise, multiply F12 by 3. And again, you're going to display it wherever the function is. So over here, Sam Mathers, right, you're going to put a function right in here. You're going to put something, an if function right here in C12. So you're going to say equal if, and then in parentheses, you're going to put 3 things. You're going to put the condition. Now, the condition is what? The condition is if a family has more than 2 students or, greater than 2, or you could do it otherwise. You could say, you could also say if the family has less than or equal to 3 students, that would be the same thing. So you got to have a condition. So let's just say we wanted to know if it's more than 2 students, then the tuition or normally if it's okay. So let's start back up here. You're going to put an if in here. If the number of students, notice that's B12. If the number of students is greater than 2, right? If B12 is greater than 2, then what do you want to do? You want to multiply the number of students, right? Which is B12 times what? Times $50 per student because it's more than 2 students. But if that's not true, if it's not true that the number of students is greater than 2, then you would multiply B12 by what? By $60. Does that make sense? So you're going to have to figure out the formula. So, but it's basically going to say whatever is in B12, if that's greater than 2, then what do you want to do? Right? Just like in this case, I said, if in E12, if it's greater than 50, what did I want to do? I wanted to multiply something by 2. Otherwise, I wanted to multiply something by 3. So that's your task for that particular assignment is to put a formula here and copy this formula down. And it should come up with something similar to what I have here. All right. All right, finally, the last thing I want to look at is this employee pay. You did something similar earlier in the semester where you took the hours a person worked. Like in this case, Duke Francis worked 50 hours and he has a pay rate of 20. Okay, so you calculated the pay by multiplying the hours worked times the pay rate. So this guy worked 50 hours, so his pay rate should be 20. And this is a little bit of a twist on this because you're going to do this, you're going to calculate this column right here. So you need to come up with a formula to go in cell D23. So in this case right here, you're going to put in a formula. But the twist on this is you want to also include overtime. So in this case, Duke Francis worked 50 hours. So if you work 50 hours, a normal work week is 40 hours. So he worked 10 extra hours of overtime. All right. So if a person works overtime, what they do is they get their normal pay for 40 hours, but they get time and a half usually. They get you multiply the pay rate by 1.5. So he would get $20 instead of $20 per hour, he would get it would be $30 per hour. Okay, so let's just see how this would be calculated. So if and I've given it to you right here. Basically, the first 40 hours you just multiply it by the rate, but then you add the hours he worked minus 40. So in this case, that would end up being 10. So this part would be he would get his 40 hours worth of work, and then he would get his 10 hours. This would work out to 10 times the rate times 1.5. Okay, so that's the formula that you would need to calculate if a person has overtime. But if a person doesn't have overtime, it's simply the hours times the rate. So in this case, Holly Dupree it's going to just multiply whatever's here times whatever's here. So that's how you will get the 360. But you're going to have one function that has an if in it. So basically, you're going to put something like equal if. And what is the condition going to be? Remember, there's three parts separated by commas. There's a condition. And in this case, you're going to be taking the condition that if the hours worked is greater than 40. So that would be, what is that? B23, is that greater than 40? So that's what you're going to type in, if B23 greater than symbol 40, then you do a comma, because the second part, remember, there's three things, and there's the condition, and then there's condition if it's true. So if that's true, you put a comma after the condition, and you say, okay, if it's true, you want to come up with this formula right here. You want to take 40 times the rate, which would be, what is that? C23 plus plus what is that? B23, which is the hours worked, right? Minus 40 times the rate, which would be 20 times 1.5. That's what you do if the condition is true. If it's false, you just take the hours, which would be what? B23, and multiply that by the rate, which would be C23. So hopefully you should be able to come up with that formula fairly easily. It's one formula, and you just copy it down. One formula that has an if statement. Do not just put different formulas for each one of these. It should be one formula copied down with an if function, so that it looks, if the hours worked is greater than 40, it calculates one thing, but otherwise it calculates something else. All right, that's the assignment. Let me know if you have questions.